we're going to talk about three more things with regards to the R&R piece. One of the things you've been hearing now today and all day yesterday, if you were here, was targeting these high-risk folks. So let's talk about what that means a little bit, okay? So if you all go out of here and you say, okay, we're going to target these high-risk populations, what considerations do we need to make before we do that, okay? You guys can feel free to say things if you'd like. That would be awesome. Can anybody think of what we need if we're going to target these folks? Any ideas? Yes?
We need appropriate interventions for them.
Exactly. So if we leave here and all of our interventions were for low-risk folks and we start putting the high-risk folks in those interventions, what do we got? We've got a mess, right? Not only, as we've heard before, we're going to turn the low-risk offenders into higher risk, but we're not going to get them what they need, right? So if we do that, we need to think in three ways of the three things. First, target population mental health-wise, we need to make sure we've got what treatment for this high-risk folks, okay? If we're going to take people with schizophrenia, we need treatment for medications and things that they need, right? Versus lower risk, maybe some anxiety disorders, PTSD. We need different tracks that way, right? We also need to think substance abuse-wise. If we're bringing people in who are going to be IOP or need intense treatment, do we have that available, okay? And then we also need, as we've talked before, the criminal risk piece. Do we have that so we can deal with that? Now, if I say risk to the mental health folks, how do they think of risk? Okay, dangerousness. Dangerousness how? Dangerous to self or others, right? Okay, is that the same way that our probation folk think of, how do they think of risk?
More of risk of danger to themselves or risk of danger for committing an offense.
Yep, dangerousness to the community, right? Do our attorneys and judges think of it any differently? How do they think of it? Public safety, right? So when we talk risk, one of the things we need to do is realize what is risk to everybody and make sure as a group we're understanding that well. Okay, so I know this is going to come up, so it's come up several times before. If we're going to take this high-risk individual, and I don't know if any of you were with Dr. Stedman in his session, but he says, if you take these, what is everybody scared of? We're scared of this. What if X happens, right? What if this big thing happens? Okay, were any of you in Dr. Stedman's session when he said, okay, what did he say? If you think about that, what's going to happen with that?
I think he was talking about preparing for the event before it happens.
Right. Prepare because what's going to happen? It's inevitably going to happen, right? And it is best if it doesn't happen on day 3 of our mental health court, right? Be better if it happens a little later than that if it's going to happen. So let me give you just a couple ideas. Because we started our mental health court back in 2002. So we've been 11 years now. And we've been dealing with this medium to high risk folks all along, okay? So let me tell you, it's a huge advantage to have a federal grant, which you guys have. Okay, that's awesome. There is an advantage, if you look at this from a strength-based perspective, to not having a federal grant. Does anybody know what the advantage is? Yeah, if nobody gives you any money, nobody can tell you what not to do, right? So we didn't have any money telling us what to do. So we've been able to take high-risk offenders, violent offenders, all kinds of different offenders. So I'm going to tell you a couple stories real quick. Okay, the first one's a guy with schizophrenia that we've known for years. Okay, I'm from Idaho, rural Idaho. Okay, it's exactly how you think of rural Idaho if you haven't been there. Okay, it's hills, it's cowboys, everybody's tough, everybody's gruff, except me, of course. I'm a little wimpy, but they're tough. Okay, so this is a guy that was a high school wrestler. Okay, he's about this tall, he's about this wide, and he's solid as a rock. Okay. Well, how he left this little county he was in Idaho is the sheriff drove him to the border and dropped him off and said, do not come back, I will shoot you. Okay? I think he was pretty serious about that too. So anyway, years later, we're working with this guy, and he gets very symptomatic with his schizophrenia. Well, at one point, he's living in his apartment, and he gets fixated, and he's very psychotic, not taking his meds, and he takes a chainsaw to get through to his neighbor, who's in the other room. Okay? He's a pretty high-risk guy, okay? We happened to take him into our mental health court. We had to work with the attorneys, make sure the victims were okay with that. Anyway, pretty high-risk guy. Everybody's a little worried, what happens if we take this guy? Long story short with this guy is we worked him through the program. When he's on meds, he's great. He is a high risk. He's got some criminal thinking, several of these things that we need to talk about. But we worked him through the program, graduated the program. Okay, still comes by my office every once in a while. Okay, no problems with this guy. Okay, let me give you exhibit 2. Okay, guy number 2. Because the one thing, let me preface. Well, I'll kind of get to that as we talk about this guy. This is a guy that had been to prison. Okay, he'd already done one prison sentence, and then he topped out his time with his felony. Comes back through the system. This time he's on a misdemeanor, okay? He's in the system. I forget what the charge was, DUI, exactly what the charge was. But we've got him for a misdemeanor case. Has schizophrenia, okay? Very known to the system. When we staff him, everybody's like, yeah, we know him. Medium to high risk guy, okay? So what's going to happen with this guy in our community if we don't take him in mental health court where he's a misdemeanor? Okay, what's going to happen with him? Okay, he may go to jail. For how long is he going to go to jail? Probably not long. So if he goes, let's say he goes 30 days and he's on for 2 years, then where's he going to go? Okay, right back to the community. Some probation officer is going to have him. What's it going to say? Supervise him in high intensity, and this guy's going to have him all by himself, right? So we take this guy into our court. Okay, very high risk guy. Let me tell you a little bit more about this guy. He's got in the past, he's had some issues where he's been symptomatic and he just fires his gun off into the trees. Okay? That's great. We love that on a risk assessment, right? That's awesome. Remember, we're in Idaho, so guess who has access to guns? Everybody, okay? The dogs have access to guns. Okay? So now the other thing about this guy that you need to know is he was actually convicted on a sex offense. Okay? We don't have any money. We can look at this if we need to. So we don't take predators, but we look at each case. This was a case where he was 19. I think the girl was 17 and a half, one of those cases. Okay? So we've got that on the record. Okay? We take him in. We do drug testing on him. We get him into treatment. He does great. For about 4 to 6 months, he's doing fabulous. Next couple months, he's slipping a little bit. We know he's slipping. We start rallying around him. So this guy then takes off. One night we get a call. Actually, I get a call one morning. It's about 4 in the morning. And the probation officer has gotten a call. And this guy's up in the woods in this little area that we've got. And the report is that he shot his cousin. Okay? So how many of you want that call? Okay? So now as you're thinking about this, we're talking high-risk cases. This scenario is going to happen, right? So what happens is your mind is you're a coordinator. Okay? It's 4 in the morning. You know the local news is coming up. So we're thinking, okay, we got a guy with a past gun charges, okay, that registered as a sex offender, okay, that shot some guy and he's in our mental health court. Okay? And yeah. So anybody want to trade places on that one? So this is one of those cases where what do you do? Okay. So let me backtrack. Here's what we've done kind of preparing for this. Obviously, you can't totally prepare for this. But what are some of the things you'd think we should be doing to prepare for that? Any ideas?
Communicate with the judge.
Okay. Communicate with the judge. Excellent. So as soon as we find this out, okay, probation's talked. They've talked to me as the coordinator. We've talked to treatment. First call we make to the judge. Okay, judge, be aware in case when you come to work at 8, if the camera's on the, on the steps, you know the whole story. Okay, what else?
We have an adverse event policy in our mental health court to help structure that.
And what are some of the things that are in that policy?
Everyone has everyone else's cell phone numbers, home phone numbers, email contacts. We all know how to get in touch with each other, and we communicate. We CC everybody on all our email communication.
Okay, perfect. Okay, what else do we need to do to kind of manage this situation?
In that plan, decide what the correspondence is going to be with the media.
Exactly. And who's the media going to contact? Judge. Okay, probably the judge. Who else? Okay, they may call me. Who else? Just so you know, our state mental health department does our treatment. Okay? Okay, them. Okay, and what? So there's a lot of people here that could get a surprise, right? Okay, what's worse than this situation? A surprise visit from the media that you don't know about this situation, right? So that's another thing. Have that policy in place. So we went zipping calls everywhere. The judge knew, trial court administrator needed to be on his radar so that our administrative judge, they could have showed up at his desk, right? In our capital, they like to know. They hate to have surprise calls to the capital, whether it be the mental health Supreme Court, anybody. So get that word out and let everybody know what you're doing. Cover your bases so everybody knows, okay? Now, here was the comforting piece about this, okay? What do you do when this gets resolved? What's the first thing we're going to do when this gets resolved? However it ends. We're going to look back, right? We're going to have 20/20 vision when we look back, okay? So as we look back on this situation, as I'm sitting here, I'm thinking worst case scenario. We haven't found the guy yet. He's already shot somebody. So the first thing you're doing is praying the guy doesn't die, right? That would complicate factors. Okay, we didn't know for sure who it was, and we don't know what's going to happen with this guy. How's he going to be feeling? He could be suicidal. He may kill himself. All these things are going through your head. Okay? So we took all that, kicked everything up. How this resolved was the police found him. The probation officer helped him. We kind of had ideas where he would go. Found him. The guy didn't die, which was good. The guy was actually a cousin who was, if we look at this and we talk about antisocial peers, he was a guy that he'd run with before. Okay, if you were in Dr. Stedman's session and he talked about what happens when you mix drugs or alcohol with our folks and the risk level. Okay, more than doubles, right? More than doubles. Well, this is a cousin that showed up with a bunch of, I think it was alcohol, and away they went. They ended up at a bar, okay, and he ended up shooting his cousin and disappearing. Okay, long story short, they caught him. The guy then didn't die. All those things probably were handled as well as we could possibly handle them. Okay, then you do the rear view mirror check. Okay, so that if I start and I back up now and I say, okay, what would we do differently with this guy if we had this to do again? Okay, we didn't know he was going to shoot himself, or shoot his cousin. But if we were to back up, what would we have done differently? Take away his guns. Take away his guns. We did. He didn't have guns. Okay, the cousin brought the gun. Excellent. Okay, what else? Because it's the newspaper test, right? What else could we have done to do something differently with this case? Anything we should have done?
Limit contact with certain people.
Yeah, we had limited that. We can't live with him, but he wasn't required. We were checking on that. Excellent. What else? Anything else you can think of?
Other than not taking him.
Yeah, other than not taking him. So now that's the hindsight test, right? So to me, that's a pretty good test. Does that feel pretty good? The outcome was terrible. The incident was terrible. But looking back, we kind of had all our ducks in a row, right? It's not like we didn't know about the sex, offense when he was younger. It's not like we didn't know about the guns, and we had all those things that we were in our plan that we were trying to look at. So that will help you when these incidents come up that, hey, we've done this before, or not this incident, but we got all our ducks in a row. Okay? The other thing that will help you is this, and this is easier 11 years in, okay? And Hank talked about this a little bit, Dr. Stedman, of have some positive experiences with the media and things. So we've had people come to graduations. They know our folks. We've got data. We've got the data right here. I can rattle off the data to you right now. With this group, this past year we had a 70% graduation rate with them. Okay? Guess what our recidivism rate was with the felonies? 20%. Okay, we know that. With the misdemeanors, guess what it was? 19%. So we know it's a rare thing, and we've got our ducks in a row, so when we take these guys, we know what's, we've at least got that covered. Yes?
Even though it happened while he was under advising this health court, I mean, nobody but the people in this room would recognize the positive part of it is it could have happened even if he wasn't in your mental health court. He was going to be doing perhaps a 30-day sentence on misdemeanor anyway. The only other thing I would say is you're in Iowa. Can you do Idaho?
Iowa, Idaho, it's late in the afternoon. I'm with you. Few mountains, is the only difference.
But you're, as far as limiting the radius where can your...
Yeah, he was out of his radius. Yeah, he went to a bar outside where he was supposed to go to with the cousin. So, but your point's exactly right. So our point with these is you look at these, because part of what happens is as teams, when you've been dealing with low-risk offenders and you move to high risk, you have this discussion as a team, right? This bad incident's going to happen. Things are going to happen. That's the discussion to have. We have this all the time. If you have this guy in your situation, okay, even felons, okay, a lot of our felons, people assume, if you're not in this business, you don't understand this, people think, oh, high-risk felons, will they go to prison? Well, in Idaho, do all the high-risk felons go to prison? He happens to be a judge in Idaho, so I'm picking on him a little. Absolutely not, right? Where do they end up? They end up in the community on high, what is it called? Intense supervision. Well, what does intense supervision look like? Yeah, it's not that intense, right? Okay, so if we have that person, where would we rather have them? We'd rather have them in our mental health court. We've got the best treatment for them. We've got intense supervision. We've got accountability with our judge. That's a much safer spot, for our community, for us to try and keep them safe than it is on intense supervision with probation, where we've got one probation officer hanging out there, right? Okay, so let's move forward here. So we're taking these guys. We want to talk about screening and assessment with these guys, and then screening and assessment and how we apply it. Okay, so quickly, if we're going to screen these folks and assess them, what do we need to screen for mental health-wise? How are we going to determine what our target population is? What's that? SPMI. So whatever it is, ours happens to be SPMI. How do we screen? What happens in the screening process? What's the difference between screen and assess?
One's an event, the other is an ongoing process.
Okay, one's an event, one's ongoing, right? One's brief, supposedly, right? So how do you screen those in? If this takes, what happens to our folks if it takes me 3 weeks to assess this guy? What happens to him? Yeah, if he's out and about, he's probably got 2 more charges. What happens to him if he's in jail? He sits, right? How do our people do in jail? Horribly, right? So we've got to find ways typically in our mental health system to speed up that assessment process. Make sure we're as timely as we can be with that, okay? And remember, it is an assessment. We may not get it exactly right, okay? But we're going to go with what we've got at that point, right? Now, what about substance abuse? What do we want to know from the substance abuse end? Screening and assess. Okay, is they actively using? Okay, that would be good to know. What are they using? Okay, what else do we want to know? History of using.
And what impact it may have on their mental illness.
Okay, what impact it's going to have? Good. What else? I'm looking for, now I'm fishing. I'm like on a fishing expedition. I'm fishing for one thing. That's good, who they use with. All these things are good. As far as distinguishing in there, what? Yes? Dependence versus abuse. Why do we want to know that? Why is that important, or is that important? Okay, primary diagnosis, and it's going to have an impact on how we respond, right? So we need to know that, okay? Now, as far as criminogenic risk, what are we looking for? Low, medium, or high, right? So how do we figure that out quickly? Okay, we talked about this a little bit yesterday. In the sentencing process, how do we know? How are we going to get that information? Okay, NCIC. What's that going to tell us? It'll tell us criminal history, right? What if we just screen for criminal? What if we screen this and we say, they got some charges and they're mentally ill. Okay? Then what happens if we take them in? What do we want to know before we accept them? We want to make sure they're medium to high, right? What happens if we accept them on a screen and they're low risk and we got them now? Okay, we're going to make them worse. So we've got to know in your process as you set that up, make sure you have something so that you're sure this guy's medium to high risk. Some of you probably have that. Some of you are probably in the planning stages of that. But think of that, okay? Now, let's talk about, we've got the screening. We've screened them in the right way, okay? Now, let's talk about what we do with them and how that informs our treatment plan, okay? If we have them in here and we've got severe and persistently mentally ill person, okay, and we've got a probation and treatment, how much do we share with probation and how much does probation share with us? Is that important? Okay, what do we need to know from probation? What do we want to know from probation? Anything?
Their history,
okay.
Other family history, who their peers are.
Who their peers are, good. What else do we want to know from probation? Where they live, okay, good. What does probation need to know from mental health? Okay, if he's in treatment, even more. What's that? If he's in compliance, okay. Medications, okay. How specific do we need to be with probation as far as medications?
Very specific.
Okay.
It's drug testing.
Okay. Why? How specific? Very specific. Why?
Depends on what substances they're screening for.
Okay. Good. Well, how much do our probation officers know will they check the meds like if they go to the house? Okay, good. Good. Okay, so what do our mental health people need to know if they go to the house and they're checking meds as far as probation's concerned? Do they need to know anything?
What meds they're not supposed to be taking.
Okay, good. What meds they're not supposed to be taking? What else?
Who's not supposed to be in the house?
Who's not supposed to be in the house? Perfect. How does that tie into this? What's one of our big ones? Okay, number 4, antisocial peers, right? Okay, so if Cousin Eddie's over there, maybe we should all know Cousin Eddie's over there, right? Maybe we don't even know what Cousin Eddie looks like, right? Other than he drives a big old motor coach thing, right? Okay, what else do we need to know that's important from probation's sake? Adam, any thoughts? Not to pick on Adam. Anything else we need to know from probation's sake for the mental health guys? Anything you can think of up here? What? Okay, rules in general, right? Okay.
House arrests, are they allowed to leave for work? Or
Good. Okay.
any relationships he has with
either or.
Yeah, with either or, right? Okay, so let's spin this forward, okay? So everybody take this out. I want to use this for a minute, okay? This is our LSI, okay? This is our new guy that we're getting into mental health court. Okay, so I want you to look at this. One of the things we do that's important, I think, when we first get somebody in our system, we've accepted, right? Give them our blessing, we got them. Okay, about 3 weeks in, once we know them pretty well, in our team meeting, our mental health people go over their diagnosis, okay, what meds they're taking, what their history is their trauma history. Okay, hopefully you're trying to get better at that. We're trying to get better at that. We need to know that, right? History of hospitalizations, all of that information. Our mental health people share all of that. Okay. The other thing, the last thing that they share with us is they do a strengths assessment. So we know what they like, what they're good at, what's their history, that kind of thing. Okay. We've got a gal we're going to talk about in our deal here that was a basketball player at a university in Utah. Okay. That's important for us to know, isn't it? Okay. So we do a strengths assessment. At that same time, and they'll also, going through that strengths assessment, we need to make sure the assessment for substance abuse is there. We want to know, again, the dependence versus abuse, right? Then probation will do the same thing. They'll go through the criminal history, okay, and all of that. They'll also go through this LSI, okay? So if we go through this LSI, this is interesting here for a minute, okay? Look down here if you've got it in front of you. You can see this guy's a 33, right? Medium to high risk. On the front page, right below... right above where it says comparison to prison inmates. Can you see that? Probability of recidivism. What's his probability of recidivism at this point? Nope, above that. Greater than 90. Okay? So if we can reduce that very much at all, we've done good work, right? Because that's a pretty high chance of recidivism. Okay, so 33 helps us. It helps us to know 33, doesn't it? Okay, flip the page over, if you will. Okay, let's look at this. Okay, criminal history, if you look at that, if you actually draw kind of a football above that medium right there, all of those scores right there are medium to high. When I first looked at this, you get a little bit lost because some are so high and some are very high. You realize almost all of these scores are in the medium to high range. Okay, so if we're going to use this in our treatment planning, how does this help us? Okay, what does the education employment tell us? And how does that address this? How does it tie in here? Okay. Education may not follow rules very well. Okay. What else does it tell us? May have a learning disability. May have a learning disability. That's something else we can look for, right? What else may it tell us? Poor work history. Poor work history for sure. Okay. Voc rehab, right? So as far as informing our treatment planning, this guy might need voc rehab, right? Is that something we can do to help him? Absolutely. Does that help us lower his risk to recidivate? Absolutely, right? Okay, when we get down one more, financial. Okay, where's financial on the list? Yeah, where is it on this list of Central 8? Man, it's not on there. Can you believe it? We have a little saying in our mental health court. Okay, I'm going to pick on Mr. Maggio again because he actually worked with us for years and now he's graduated on. But okay, what's our saying, Paul, when somebody first comes in, our top 3? Meds, money, and housing. Meds, money, and housing. Okay, if they don't have in a mental health court meds, money, and housing, what have they got? They got nothing. They're homeless with no money. Okay, how would you do? If you're homeless with no money and nowhere to go, how would you do? You wouldn't do so well, would you? You know? So we can't worry about a lot of this until we got meds, money, and housing in place. We get that in place, then we can start looking at stuff, right? So financial's huge, isn't it? What can we learn from that financial piece? What may that be with our people? Think about people you know that qualify for mental health court. What may that be?
He might be able to get Social Security.
Sure. And he may not have Social Security, right? Maybe if he has Social Security, what does that mean? Might need a payee, right? He's probably getting taken advantage of, isn't he? Okay? Could be his best friend, could be Cousin Eddie, could be everybody taking advantage of him. We got to know that. That helps us in our treatment planning, knowing what to target, doesn't it? Okay, good. Okay, look at family marital. How much time are we going to spend on family marital? Not a lot right now, right? That looks pretty good right now. Could be that the significant others moved out. Could be that they come back and that goes off the charts, right? So we want to watch for that. Okay, what about leisure and recreation? He's got some hobbies. Apparently, the guy's got a lot of hobbies, right? He needs some more appropriate hobbies, doesn't he? Okay, how odd do you think that is for our folks, for that leisure recreation to look like that? Pretty common, isn't it? Why does it look like that?
Social isolation, hanging with the wrong people.
Hanging with the wrong people, doesn't it? Okay, so we know this. So how does it affect our treatment planning in here? What do we need to know to target this behavior? Because it's up here, right? It's a top 4, right? What do we need to know?
Finding things to do.
Okay, we need to find him things to do. And that's typically what we do, right? Let's just drop all your friends and get new ones. Not that hard, just do it lickety-split. Right? What more do we need to know that would help us?
What does he like to do?
What does he like to do? Okay. Even more specific about these, how often is it with our people there's a name? There's 1 or 2 names. Watch for this guy and this guy. This, when they come around, how about my example I shared earlier? Okay. When Cousin Eddie comes around, this guy is headed downhill and downhill fast. Okay, it's important to know that. It's important for treatment to know that. It's important for probation to know that. So when we see Cousin Eddie around, we can act, right? Okay, good. Companions, you can see that's fairly high. Is that pretty typical? Pretty typical. Okay, alcohol, drug problems. Okay, we know that's on here, right? Again, what happens when alcohol and drug gets involved with our people? Risk for recidivism? Well, the risk for violence wasn't in there. Doubles, right, with our folks. And we know it's high here. Where's the emotional personal on here? Okay, it's high here. Where is it on our central 8?
Could be attitude.
Okay, could be. Okay, that's your mental health symptoms partly, isn't it? If you ever looked, if you've seen one of these LSIs and you've seen a mental health psychosocial assessment, man, they just target the same things. So we're assessing the same things. We just need to share the information. Okay? Okay, so I want you to know that we need to use this. You can see how beneficial this is as we design a treatment plan with mental health and treatment right there. Yes?
I have a question about the criminal history.
Okay.
And how this plays into treatment and sentencing.
Okay.
Up top on the graph, it has criminal history median.
Uh-huh.
And then if you look at the 10 points under criminal history,
uh-huh,
they're all yeses, including prior offending, history of violence, failed on probation, parole supervision, was incarcerated before. First, how does a person with those criminal history scores only rank a medium?
Rank a medium. Mm-hmm.
Second, if I look at those 10 items, depending on what the current charge is, this is somebody that's going to get a long sentence.
Uh-huh.
So, first, how's that only a medium?
Okay.
And if that only ranks as a medium with that prior offending, I think that also ties into the criminogenic risk on the, this is a medium person.
Okay. Excellent questions, okay? So I honestly don't know the details of the answer to the first part of the question. Paul may know the answer to that, just because he's done this for years. So I'm going to let him answer the first part of that, but answer loud if you can, Paul.
Okay, so there are actually 10 questions in the criminal history, so you're looking at about 6 out of 10, so that's only about halfway or so.
No.
There's not all the numbers are there. Right.
6 out of 10. But what you have to also understand on the criminal history and what they train us to do is, I hate to say it almost, but really we ignore it. That is totally static. It can't change. That will always be medium. Because the first question says, have you ever been convicted of anything? Yes or no? And that's a lifetime. So if you say, yes, I've got this, and this, well, congratulations, you scored 3 points. And you will always score 3 points. You'll never get less than 3 points. And that's some of the issues I think one of the presenters mentioned, that in the static, you're going to get certain things. So for criminal history, we don't put as much emphasis on that as we do on the other, about the, I can change your friends, I can change maybe your attitude, your belief, your personality, but your criminal record, you're stuck with it. If you've ever been in a fight before, ever, even in school, well, yeah. When 8 years ago when I was in high school, I got in a fight. You get a point every time, all the time. So
those things are going to be important in sentencing. So how's that then? You're going to be taking that into account.
They are, and I forget where you're from. I forgot which. Yeah, Pennsylvania. In Idaho, this is a guy. This actually is a misdemeanor case. This guy, you don't know that up front. This is a misdemeanor case. Not that it couldn't be a felony. We have felonies that look just like this. But again, he's going to be a similar guy that we talked about before. He's not going to jail for a long time. He's going to be out in the community either way. Probably with a felony, same guy. Because we have felonies that look just like this. So, if they're, and this isn't to say as we have this discussion and we go to high risk, I know we've talked about this, this isn't to say that there isn't a place for prisons. Some people need to be in prison, okay? But some, if we can divert them and keep them out, and remember, this is that high risk population that we're going to get the biggest bang for our buck to come down on and be effective in the community. So if we can help this guy, the other thing that we look at oftentimes, and I don't know how this is in Pennsylvania or other places, but in Idaho, a lot of times, even if they do send them, let's say they send them to prison on a rider, it's called a rider, they'll go and the judge retains jurisdiction. When they come back, guess how many issues they have? So if they did go when they come back, we're probably going to want this guy back in here anyway, because all these things are still going to be out there, even though he did a rider for how much time when he came out. Does that make sense? We're going to need to target those things and help try to reduce these things as we deal with them. Okay? That's an excellent question. Okay, now, this is just part of it, though. What I want you to realize is we're talking criminal risk. This is an extremely good tool that team needs to use to inform treatment planning from the probation end, from the mental health end. Okay? As you look at these 4 things, though, you want to target, in the research it shows, we want to target those top 4 before we target these bottom 4. Okay? Anybody know why? The top 4 all start with the same word, right? Okay? If we don't attack that antisocial thinking and those pieces, we're not going to have near as much success with these down here. So we've got to tackle them simultaneously, but we've got to tackle them. Okay? So let me just give you an example of a guy. Let me tell you how this plays out in our mental health court, how it plays out. Anytime you have an SPMI individual, okay, with co-occurring substance abuse disorder, you're going to have antisocial thinking. Okay? When we first started our mental health court, the clinicians wanted to say, we can't take this guy's antisocial personality disorder. Well, all of them, if you want to get technical, have that. They got antisocial traits, something. They've got stinking thinking. Okay? We know that. Okay? We've got to tackle that. Let me tell you about how this plays out, though, as we go through this. We had a guy who had been in and out of our state hospital 20 plus times. Okay? Been to jail, I don't know how many times. Multiple times. Came to us, had schizoaffective disorder. Came to us with a felony that he was, if we didn't take him, he was going to prison. It was a delivery charge or something, I believe. And that was his history. Okay? So we bring him in. He was actually a track star in high school. Okay? Still in the high school I went to, he holds track records. Okay? Ongoing schizophrenia was onset early in his 20s. Okay? Anyway, we bring this guy in. Long story short, because I got to talk faster. We bring him in, does great in the treatment. Okay? Mental health treatment, our ACT team giving him meds every day, he cleans up. Had a real significant dependence issue. Okay? Cleaned that up very quickly. Okay? We ran him through. We've got to, as we're doing this, along with this, you've got to do something. MRT, reasoning and rehabilitation, thinking for a change, something that attacks that criminal thinking piece. Okay? He did very good on that. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but it's about honesty. Okay? That's one of the pieces. Step 1's all about honesty, all about honesty. So we target all that. He gets almost out of our program. Okay? And when we talk associations, they were all lousy. He actually gets a girlfriend. Okay? It's a miracle of our miracles. The girlfriend is not on probation. Nowhere in our system. Okay? We love her. Love the girlfriend. We love her as much as he does. Okay? We go to do a check. Our probationer just does a random check. He's doing great. He's in phase 3. Okay? Checks up. Everything's fine. Goes around the corner and recognizes, I think this is our ACT team person, actually recognizes the girlfriend's car around the corner and around the block. Okay? Lets the probation officer know. Probation officer checks up, and he was hiding the girlfriend out in the house. Okay? Why would he hide the girlfriend out in the house? We love the girlfriend. We're excited the girlfriend's there. It's an awesome deal. Okay? But where does that tie in? Okay? In MRT, one of the things they learned early on, the rules are the rules. Okay? So if it says don't step on the red lines, don't step on the red lines. What do our people think? The red lines don't apply to us. Why would you, it's a stupid rule, don't step on the red lines. That's the kind of thinking that leads them where? Right back to recidivism when they get out. So that was a thing that we targeted. We didn't do anything big. We bumped him back a phase. Said, dude, the rules are the rules, got to follow them. That was probably the biggest thing we could have done to him. Okay? He's been out, ended up marrying the girl. Our mental health court judge married him. He's been out for how many years, hasn't recidivated. Okay, great story, but it's targeting those specific things. He said the best thing that ever happened to him is that we recognized that and bumped him back. We've got to target those things. Okay, one last thing about being intentional. Oh, yes?
Y'all use MRT with your mental health course?
We do. Yeah, we use MRT. So our curriculum, we have an ACT team that does fabulous work, and they do the co-occurring treatment. Okay, we haven't got into this a lot, but make sure if you can do integrated treatment, you're just miles ahead of the game. Even if you got mental health and substance abuse and they say they're talking, they're not talking. I guarantee you. So anyway, if you can do that. And then we run everyone through MRT, okay, right off the bat because they need it. If they're scoring like this, they need MRT. They'll benefit from it. Or thinking for a change, whatever it is. Okay, now here's the other thing as you're going through this. I want to just cover this briefly, but remember, like say our gal that was a basketball player. Okay, she comes in. Her husband is an attorney that's been disbarred, living in another state. Okay, that's a little bit of a red flag, right? Okay, she's got 6 kids. She was an ex-basketball player in college. Okay, let me give you 14 guesses what her drug of choice is. Oxys, pain, right? Pain meds. Got banged up in college. Okay, so long story short, we want to be very intentional about what we target. Okay, she's substance dependence. Okay, so when she comes in and we know that and we get a dirty UA, what are we going to do with her? Any ideas? What do you want to do with them right off the bat? They get a dirty UA. Therapeutic response. Okay, that's a great therapeutic response. Can you be more specific with that therapeutic response? Okay, increased treatment. Good. Okay, what do we want to target in treatment? We want to target honesty. Okay, if we get the UA and it's positive and she didn't say anything, not good. Okay, we're going to target what? We want to know beforehand. That's what we want. She's dependent. Okay, we aren't expecting her to get clean quickly. We know we're going to have use, right? Be it alcohol, meth, whatever it is. If she's abusing, then we may handle that differently. We're going to be more aggressive with that, right? But if it's dependence and we know we're out there, we want honesty. So if the next time, okay, she comes to us and says, "Hey, I used," okay, that's a win, isn't it? We're headed in the right spot, headed in the right direction. So be intentional. I want to say intentionable for some reason. Intentional about what we're targeting and make sure we're targeting these things. Okay? It would be awesome if we all had this picture on our wall in our staffing rooms, okay, of some kind to kind of target those responses. Okay.
Go back to the guy with the great girlfriend.
Yes.
When it's identifying that line when it's too much supervision or not enough supervision.
Mm-hmm. When is it too much supervision versus not enough supervision? You know, that's a great question. I don't know that there's a great answer to that. What we do is as we go through our program and as that risk level goes down, we kind of let probation cater it to what their standards are. But obviously, we want to supervise them less if we can as we go through those stages. This guy was at the end stage, so he's probably getting just a random home visit a month. And it actually wasn't the probation officer that did it. It was the ACT team going out there to him, seeing that was going on, sharing that information, or we probably never would have caught it. But we try to decrease that as we go through. We try to do the same thing with mental health, depending on the level. Okay, we've got some people that have been through our mental health court that still receive the full gamut of mental health of ACT team services 5-6 years ago when they graduated. Okay, we've also got another guy that just sees. I ran into him in a convenience store a little while ago that graduated about 7 years ago. He's doing great. He's working, and all he does is see the clinic for meds. So, you know, recovery looks so different. We want to promote recovery, just like the title of this conference, you know, promote recovery, reduce recidivism. But that looks so different for everybody in the end. Okay, I think that's what I was supposed to cover. And I know Jessica wants to cover something on the curriculum. So I'm going to wrap up with that. Any questions, though, on anything we covered on there quickly? Any questions before we wrap up with Jessica? Yes. How do we get our mental health and substance abuse to work together? Let me tell you how we did it, because there's no one right answer, okay? But I can tell you what we did. When we started, I was actually the ACT team supervisor for our mental health court when we started, okay? And so guess how much we knew about substance abuse? 0 is exactly the right answer. We were pretty good at the mental health stuff. We knew nothing. So we contracted with another agency, okay, that did our treatment for us, and we thought it was going great until we realized even with all the releases signed, they were using, and until they were dirty on a UA, they wouldn't say anything. Okay? So somebody with red hair got fired up about that and did not like that answer very well. Okay? So we said, we're not going to do this anymore. And so what are we going to do? We went to some trainings, figured out we can do this. We pretty much just took our ACT team and went and got them all trained in substance abuse treatment. We got a model and we started doing it, okay? And how well did we do it at first? Not very good, okay? But we knew we would learn, and we did it that way. So we've got, now, I guarantee you, we provide as good of integrated treatment, better than our drug court or anything. They're good. I mean, they've been doing it, so that's how we did it. Does everybody need to do that? Absolutely not. But try to find a way, I guess, is the model. The more you can be integrated, that's the evidence-based practice, is to integrate it. My ACT team, even at first, we did the UAs. Our ACT team members did the UAs. It was awesome, okay? They may not have thought so at first, but it was awesome. You never know how much you learn by collecting a UA. It's good work. Okay, any other questions? Yes?
Is everyone in your court on ACT and supervised probation?
Yes, everyone is. Yes, they're all. Our court is actually a post-conviction court, so they've all pled and been sentenced. They're either on 2 years of probation, or some of them 5 to 10 years, whatever their sentence is for felony probation. So yes, they all get ACT services, and they're all on probation, felony, or misdemeanor.